You can spend $20,000 on speakers and end up with sound that's harsh, muddy, or headache-inducing, and it's not the speaker's fault. In real living rooms, the room itself is louder than even the most expensive gear. The reason is simple. Nearly all the sound you actually hear is bounced off your walls, not coming straight from your speakers. Before anyone upgrades their setup, they need to know why room acoustics, not price tags, determine everything you hear. So, if clarity and real quality matter to you, what's the missing fix almost nobody talks about? Sound from a speaker travels in two ways. It goes directly to your ears, and it also bounces off every surface in the room. The balance between these two, the direct-to-reverberant ratio, called DRR, decides how much of what you hear is actually the speaker and how much is the room talking back. In a typical untreated living room, the DRR is around 5 decibels. In a professionally treated space, that number jumps to 15 decibels or more. That is not a subtle difference. A higher DRR means you are hearing more of the original music and less of the room's echo and color. Above 300 Hz, your ears are especially sensitive to these reflections. This is where clarity, imaging, and detail live. When the DRR is low, reflections from walls, floor, and ceiling blend with the direct sound, smearing transients and masking the fine details that make music sound lifelike. The result is that vocals lose their presence, instruments blur together, and the soundstage collapses. Even the most expensive speakers cannot overcome this. Psychoacoustic research backs this up. Studies show that our brains use the first 80 milliseconds of sound to judge clarity and position. If the room floods your ears with reflected energy in that window, the sense of realism vanishes. The DRR is not just a measurement, it is the hidden reason why a $30,000 speaker can sound dull or harsh in a bare living room, and why a budget system can shine in a well-treated space. The 300 Hz boundary marks the point where the room's voice starts to dominate, making treatment and placement more important than the price tag. A single wall can undo the promise of high-end audio in seconds. As sound leaves the tweeter, the first thing it meets isn't always your ear, it is often the nearest sidewall, floor, or even a glass coffee table. That first reflection, shooting straight from speaker to surface to listener, arrives just a few milliseconds after the direct sound. In most living rooms, that delay lands right in the danger zone, about 5 milliseconds. At this speed, your brain can't separate the original note from its echo. Instead, the two sounds fuse, creating a kind of acoustic double vision. Imaging, your sense of where voices and instruments sit in space, collapses. The center vocal blurs, cymbals turn sharp, and the soundstage shrinks to a flat smear. Hard surfaces make things worse. Drywall, glass, bare floors, they all bounce high frequencies with almost no loss, sending a concentrated blast of treble straight back to your ears. Even the most neutral tweeter starts to sound piercing or fatiguing. The effect is so strong that a $30,000 speaker can sound harsh and shouty in a bare room, while a budget model in a treated space keeps its composure. Locating these first reflection points doesn't take fancy gear. The so-called mirror trick, placing a mirror on the wall and checking from your seat if you can see the speaker's tweeter, pinpoints exactly where trouble starts. That's the spot where a simple panel, thick curtain, or even a bookshelf can make all the difference. In untreated rooms, these early reflections are the invisible saboteurs of clarity and realism, quietly undoing the work of the world's best engineers. Standing waves below 300 Hz do not just color the bass, they rewrite it. Acoustician Dr. Sean Olive demonstrates this with a simple measurement. Set up a calibrated microphone at the listening spot. Run a sweep and watch what happens on a waterfall plot. In a typical living room, a single bass note, for example 80 Hz, can spike more than 10 decibels above the rest, lingering for half a second or more. That is not the speaker adding boom, that is the room trapping energy in a standing wave. Move the speaker just 20 centimeters and the peak collapses. The same note that rattled the windows now sits flat in the mix. Nothing inside the speaker changed. The room's geometry and the speaker's position decide whether you get tight, punchy bass, or a muddy mess. Waterfall graphs make this visible. Before the move, energy at 80 Hz hangs in the air, masking detail and making every kick drum sound bloated. After the move, the decay drops to under 100 milliseconds, a clean, controlled note. This is proof that bass problems are not baked into your gear. They are written by the room, and they can be erased. The right measurement, a small adjustment, and suddenly the whole low end snaps into focus. Hi-fi dealers know what sells. And it is not just the speaker. Step into any high-end showroom and you are surrounded by invisible upgrades. Thick panels tucked behind fabric walls, bass traps hidden in corners, ceiling clouds floating overhead. The room is tuned for one job, to make every speaker sound spectacular. Dealers rarely spell this out. Instead, they talk about synergy or the magic of their demo space. But the specs tell the story. Most showrooms target an RT60 or reverberation time of about 0.3 seconds, a level of control you will never find in a bare living room. That is why a $20,000 pair of focals sounds open and effortless under the store's spotlights, but comes home only to turn harsh or boomy. One installer put it bluntly, "We optimize the room, but we do not always say." You are hearing speaker plus treated room. When you buy, you leave with only half of what you heard. The rest, those hidden panels and traps, stays behind, quietly doing their work for the next customer. Start with the room, not the gear. The upgrade order that actually works flips the usual script. First, fix the space. For less than the cost of a single audiophile cable, a $500 investment in a thick rug and a set of wall panels can transform clarity and imaging more than swapping out a $5,000 pair of speakers. Place speakers in your listening seat at least 2 feet from the walls, creating an equilateral triangle. Use the mirror trick to mark those first reflection points, then cover them with 2 to 4 inch panels, curtains, or even a well-stocked bookshelf. Corners are bass traps in disguise. Stack dense foam, rock wool, or commercial traps in each corner to tame boomy lows. A rug between the speakers and your seat soaks up floor reflections that sharpen the highs. Heavy curtains over windows work double duty for both treble and privacy. If the room starts to sound too dead, add bookshelves or diffusers instead of more absorption. The payoff is 50 to 70% more clarity and bass control compared to a raw room at a fraction of the price of a speaker upgrade. Measure, adjust, and repeat. The room is your biggest component. Treat it like one. A single afternoon, a handful of panels, and a thick rug. Suddenly the room sounds like a different world. RT60, the measure of reverberation time, drops from a muddy 0.8 seconds to a crisp 0.35 seconds. Bass that once lingered and overpowered the music now snaps into place, tight and controlled. The homeowner, who once complained about harsh highs and boomy lows, sits back and grins. They say they thought their speakers were the problem, but it was the room all along. Now every track sounds like a live performance. The proof is in the listening, but it is also in the numbers. Clarity up, fatigue down. The same speakers, the same gear, just a smarter space. Anyone can do this. Here is your 3-step checklist. First, use the mirror trick to find and treat first reflection points. Second, measure your room response with the free app and watch for peaks and dips. Third, experiment with speaker and seat placement, then treat the corners for bass. Simple, repeatable, and the fastest route to real hi-fi. Before reaching for your wallet, reach for a panel. The biggest upgrade is already inside your walls. Right now, more than 90% of home audio setups are limited by untreated rooms, not the speakers themselves. As high-end audio keeps evolving, real progress demands we rethink where true quality begins. Sometimes the biggest upgrade isn't what you buy, it's what you change around you.